Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vacharam pangam langyate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurudin taranam parmanandam madhavam. Okay, so we had done the first two verses of chapter 29. Chapter 29 is titled Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila. And as the title indicates, this chapter is entirely devoted to the description of bhakti. So Lord Kapila had described Sankhya and Astanga. 26, 27 chapter he had spoken about Sankhya, 28 he has spoken about Astanga. Earlier on in the 25th chapter he had spoken about bhakti. And then Devahuti had asked these seemingly tangential questions about Sankhya and Astanga. But we had discussed at the time that she had asked this for the sake of completeness, comparison, and also because the devotee is interested in all paths to the Lord, not necessarily from the perspective of following it, but from the perspective of awareness. But now, having heard about the other paths, she wants to revert again to what is really close to her heart, which is the path of devotion. So he first asked about the nature of bhakti. So this was a question that she asked in the second verse, that tell me more about the nature of bhakti. And she will continue with her questioning in the third verse. So we'll start reading from verse 3. Virago yena purusho bhagavan sarvato bhavet achakshva lokasya vividamam samsritihi. Devahuti continued, my dear Lord, please also describe in detail, both for me and for people in general, the continual process of birth and death. For by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this material world. So this is the second question by Devahuti, that asking for a description of samsritaha. Samsritaha is the samsara, the cycle of birth and death. So Lord Kapila may say that in the previous verse, you have already stated that you are interested in the path of transcendence. You're interested in bhakti. Why are you interested in this cycle of birth and death? So she answers that in this very verse, saying that by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this material world. So to begin bhakti, one needs some detachment. Detachment is neither a necessary nor a sufficient condition, but it's a desirable condition. So bhakti, we have often discussed, is considered to be independent. But yet, detachment is presented as material detachment is presented as something that is a supporting anga. And unless one begins to develop an aversion to the material condition of life, the creeper of bhakti will not flourish rapidly. It will still grow. But the example is given of rowing a boat with the anchor down. It will take you more effort to row the boat, and the boat will move a lesser distance. So similarly, practicing bhakti while maintaining material attachment is going to be slow and difficult. So in order to promote this mood of detachment, Devahuti is inquiring about samsara. And she's inquiring for her own benefit. And she says, Vividamam, my benefit, and Jiva Lokasya, and for the people in general. So, so she's indicating that this is something that is afflicting everyone in the material world, and the answers will also benefit everyone. So Devahuti is talking about two things. She's talking about Shreyasriti and Samsriti. And Srila Prabhupada, he gives an explanation that Shreyasriti is the prosperous path of advancement towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Shreya means auspicious, the best. And Samsriti is the continued path of birth and death towards the darkest region of material existence. So this samsara is the change of bodies that accompanies birth and death. And Lord Kapila will oblige his mother by painting a really stark, dismal and gloomy picture of the material world in the next two chapters. So after reading that, one will automatically begin to develop detachment. Sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it's difficult to see the big picture. It's like they say that if there is an ant on the back of an elephant, it has no idea that it's on the back of an elephant. The elephant is so large, it just thinks that it's on land. Now the elephant may be jumping around, moving, doing whatever it is, it just says it's land. But if somehow it is able to step back and look at the situation, it will see that, oh, I'm on this back of this elephant. The elephant at any moment might take water and throw over the back, or might throw mud on me. I'm in a precarious situation. And then decide to do something about it. So these teachings by the sages, by the Lord, they help us take a step back and look at things from their perspective, because we are in the middle of it. We are dealing with it on a moment-to-moment basis. We are like the ants clinging on the back of the elephant. So we'll see in the next two chapters how Lord Kapila will elaborate on this question. Okay, next question by Devahuti, verse 4. Kalyaseshvara rupasya paresham cha parasyate swarupam bata kurvanti yaddeto kushalam jana. Please also describe eternal time, which is a representation of your form and by whose influence people engage in the performance of pious activities. The third question by Devahuti about the nature of time. So why is she asking about time? Kalasya Ishvara Rupasya? Because it is out of the fear of time that people begin to perform auspicious activities. When people are young, older, then their imminent end becomes clearer and clearer. And out of fear of that, people begin to perform auspicious activities. So Devahuti, she wants everyone to be aware of time, not necessarily have to experience in Spain. There is there is an ancient cave, and when you go inside the cave, there is a skeleton of a person. Not sure if it's an actual person or it's a made-up skeleton. Looks like actual skeleton, and the skeleton has a board around its neck, and that board says that as you are, I was.
Prabhu, we are losing you, bro.
Devahuti is trying to invoke the fear of death, not because of morbidity, but because she's aware that when people are more conscious of their end, they tend to become more pious. They tend to become less passionate. They tend to become more charitable. We see that even people who are not devotees, as they grow older, people become more mellow, less likely to perform sinful activities, more likely to be charitable, to be in the mode of goodness. So she's trying to invoke that in people of all ages. That even if a young person becomes aware of the influence of time, then he will act as if he is old, with that consciousness at least, that death is inevitable. So let me be more pious. Okay, next verse, 5. Lokasya mithyaभिमतेर चक्षुषस् Tiram parushaptasya tamasya nashray Shantasya karmasva anuvidhaya dhiya Tvama virashi kila yoga bhaskara. My dear Lord, you are just like the sun, for you illuminate the darkness of the conditional life of the living entities. Because their eyes of knowledge are not open, they are sleeping eternally in that darkness without your shelter. And therefore, they are falsely engaged by the actions and reactions of their material activities. And they appear to be very fatigued. So, Devahuti in this verse is doing two things. She is glorifying the Lord, that you are just like the sun. You illuminate the darkness of conditional life. And she is also lamenting about the situation of the conditioned soul. So let's look at the glorification first. So she gives 4 qualities of the Lord that are subjects of glorification. And they also kind of correspond to the 4 entrapments of the conditioned soul. So she says, you have appeared for mithya abhimate, for destroying false material identity. Second, for achakshusha, for giving enlightenment. So destroying something false does not automatically give something true. It may result in the state of absence of false. But the Lord not only does mithya bhimate, he also gives enlightenment, achakshusha. Then third, tamasi parushuptasya, for destroying the darkness of sleep in material life. And fourth is for drying up the pool of exhaustion caused by thoughts of attachment to action. These two are the results of the first two. That when a person is enlightened, then the darkness of sleep is destroyed, and the person gives up the sense of exhaustion, material exhaustion. So material life is defined as being exhausting because there is so much of endeavor but very little result. Like it's sometimes you're working on something and you work and work and work, but nothing comes out of it, right? And it just drains energy, exhausting. That's the nature of material life. So she is glorifying Lord Kapila as the revealer of bhakti, gyan, and astam.
We lost Prabhu.
Yes.
Is he aware or not? Let me get my phone 1 second.
Prem Kishore Prabhu, your background looks so beautiful, like a virtual background.
Oh, is it? Yeah, Prabhu joined here.
I think I'm beginning to have the same problem again. I should probably have to switch to my phone. At what point did I lose you?
You mentioned the 4 points of glorification, Prabhuji.
Bhakti, Gyan, and detachment. You start just finishing upon the fourth one, Prabhu.
Okay. So then I was describing the conditions, the deplorable state of the material entities. I think that part we had already disconnected, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Prabhu.
So these four are that Devahuti is glorifying Lord Kapila for. They are also the four defects in material existence. Like Mithya means that person is deluded by false ego. Achashuksha means that blind to spirituality. Chiram is sleeping, unaware. Even if person comes and tells, person is disinterested. And tamasi, lacking discrimination. That person is unable to discriminate between what is beneficial, what is not, what is really beneficial and what is not. And then she says that these four things are prasuptasya, that they have been going on for a very long time. And what has it resulted in? Shrantasya karmasya, that the jiva is very much fatigued by material activities. Now, jivas who are in the mode of passion, even in the mode of goodness, may disagree with this, saying that no, we are actually very much enthused by material activity. Devotee is giving a view across many lifetimes, not just a particular a few years in a particular birth. Even in one birth, we see that towards the end of one's life, this Shantasya Karmasya becomes more prominent. And across many lifetimes, this mood becomes stronger and stronger. So why can't they cure themselves? Lord Kapila might say. So she says, Anuviddhaya dhiya. Because they themselves are attached to this with their intelligence. This is the root cause. That they are themselves attached to it. Nobody is forcing them. Maya is not forcing them. Krishna is not forcing them. Yamaraj is not forcing them. Anuviddhaya dhiya. By their own intelligence, they are attached to it. So then Lord Kapila might say, okay, so they are the cause of it, and they should figure out a way to resolve it. So she says, anashraya. So ashraya means shelter. Anashraya means without shelter. So she's saying that they may be themselves the cause of all this. But if they were to get your shelter, then all this will be resolved. Now, she's not putting the responsibility on Lord Kapila that you go around giving shelter to people, right? And she's not blaming him that because you withdrew your shelter, they became an ashraya, and that is why all this happened. Which is why she's giving all the other reasons, which is squarely putting the responsibility on the jiva. That the jiva is nitya abhimatya chakshusha chiram tamasi paruspattasya then shantasya karmasya anuvideyadiya. But now she is asking for compassion and mercy. That if you were to give them your ashraya, then the jiva can come out of this situation. Otherwise, how is she describing the situation of the jiva? By metaphors. So she is considering a conditioned jiva to be a mad person who is blind, who is sleeping in complete darkness, who is very exhausted, but also very attached to his present state. Right? So you can see the superlatives. Person is mad, no intelligence, blind, cannot see, complete darkness. The environment does not allow him to see. Sleeping means that eyes are tightly closed, very exhausted. So likely to sleep for a very long time. Even if he gets up, he is very attached to his present state, which is that of sleeping. But the worst thing that she says is there is no one to wake him. And that's where she is begging for the mercy of the Lord. So Prabhupada says that the Lord is described herein as Yoga Bhaskar, the son of the system of all yoga. Devahuti has already requested her glorious son to describe Bhakti Yoga. And the Lord has described Bhakti Yoga as the ultimate yoga system. Bhakti Yoga is the sun-like illumination for delivering the conditioned soul, whose general condition is described here. They have no eyes to see their own interest. So just like the conditioned soul is described through metaphors of darkness and sleeping and eyes closed, devotional service is described by Prabhupada by a metaphor of the sun. The sun illuminates everything. So by the presence of the sun, all these conditions can be reversed. Vishwanath Chakravarti makes an interesting point here that this glorification of Devahuti and this is not just in this verse, but we see that in several verses, is that she is aware of the fact that her son is God. Only Yashoda and Nanda Baba have a Vatsalya Bhav that is never impacted by the Lord's divinity, regardless of anything. When Krishna lifted Govardhan, Yashoda said that Nanda Baba had lifted it. When Krishna showed his universal form, then Yashoda Mai, she made the momentary Aishwarya Bhav a servant of a Vatsalya Bhav. So there was a momentary awe, seeing the universal in Krishna's mouth. And then the Vatsalya Bhav took over. Is there a demon over there? What's happened? Am I getting bewildered? Right? So the Vatsalya Bhav immediately predominated the Aishwarya Bhav. But all other devotees in Vatsalya Bhav will at some times or the other be overcome by Aishwarya. We see that in the case of Devahuti. We see that in the case of Devaki and Vasudeva. When Krishna killed Kamsa, they were very reluctant to approach Krishna because they had just witnessed Krishna killing the most fearsome Kamsa casually. So they were overcome with awe and reverence until Krishna, he extended his Yogmaya on them. Okay, verse 6. Maitruvacha iti maturvachah slakshnam pratinandya mahamunihi abhavase kuru shrestha ritastam karunarditaha. Maitreya said, O best amongst the Kurus, the great sage Kapila, moved by great compassion and pleased by the words of his glorious mothers, spoke as follows. So I'm going to ask you a question over here. One can understand, so two emotions are ascribed to Lord Kapila, compassion and pleasure. One can understand compassion. How do we understand pleasure? Why is he pleased by the words of Devahuti? Without reading the purport, of course.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I think it is because Jeva's, willingness to take shelter, taking by their own responsibility.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I think Devahuti, she already enlightened herself, but still she is inquiring, not maybe for the benefit of all other people, and to deliver the other people, not herself, most probably. That's
Okay.
why Kapila is very pleased.
Okay, good. Thank you. So hearing the words of Devahuti, Lord Kapila, two emotions are seen: Karunardita, Karun is Karuna, great compassion, and Prita. Prita is love or pleasure. So why is the Lord pleased? Because really speaking, these questions are actually much below the level of realization of both the speaker and the Lord. Right? So, so let's assume Krishna has come, and you go in front of Krishna and say, "My house is dirty. What's the best way to clean it?" Right? And Krishna is pleased. Why would Krishna be pleased? So Devahuti is of a stature where she is far beyond these kinds of questions. And when the Lord is there, one would expect the questions to be commensurate to the presence of Lord. But despite the fact these questions are much below the stature, there is Prita. There is the Lord is pleased. And the reason is Karuna. So Karuna is the quality of compassion for other living entities that is being displayed by Devahuti. And we see this as a recurring theme. So conversations in the Bhagavatam are between exalted devotees. Very, very exalted devotees, like Narad talking to Brahma, Brahma talking to Krishna, Vidur talking to Maitreya, Parikshit Maharaj talking to Sukadev Goswami. So very, very exalted people. Yet they ask questions that are very, very basic. Same theme we see in Bhagavad Gita also. That Arjun is asking basic questions of Krishna. Why? Because of Karuna. Because as devotees of the Lord, they are compassionate towards those who are not so advanced. So Prahlad Maharaj, he says this in the 7th canto, 9th chapter, where he says that I have nothing to worry about. He says, I have no fear of material existence. Because wherever I stay, I will be absorbed in your thoughts. But what is my concern? He says, for the fools and rascals who are making elaborate plans for material happiness and maintaining their families, societies, and countries. I am simply concerned with love for them. So he says with love because he's calling them fools and rascals. So it does not mean that he's contemptuous about him, but he's concerned just like a father is concerned or a friend is concerned about a friend. He says, I'm concerned with love. So this act of considering the welfare of others, specifically the spiritual welfare of the others, pleases the Lord. Krishna is always compassionate, but it is the mercy of his devotee that allows the conditioned soul to come in contact with the compassion of the Lord. How do we know that Krishna is compassionate? Just by the fact that Krishna comes to the material world. So think about it, that the jivas in the material world hate Krishna. They have no interest in associating with him. They have already rejected him over and over again. Yet, Krishna comes out of compassion. Right? So that is the extent of his compassion for the jivas. And when the Lord sees this compassion reflected in his devotees, his own compassion becomes even more prominent. And along with that, his love for those devotees also becomes more prominent. That is why both the word Karuna and Prita are used over here by Maitreya. Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he quotes the Bhagavad Gita, and this is his quoting the verse 68 and 69, where Krishna says that that one who explains this to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. There is no servant in this world more dear to me, nor will there ever be one more dear. Why? Because they are reflecting the compassion of the Lord towards those who are less fortunate or less interested. So that is why we will see Lord Kapila, moved by great compassion and love, answer the rather basic questions by his mother elaborately. Verse 7. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Bhakti Yoga Bahuvidho Margir Bhamini Bhavyate Swabhav Guna Margena Pumsam Bhavo Vibhadyate. Lord Kapila, the personality of Godhead, replied, O noble lady, there are multifarious paths of devotional service in terms of the different qualities of the executor. So Devahuti's first question was, explain to me about bhakti in more details. Second question was, talk to me about the cycle of birth and death. Third question was, explain to me the nature and influence of time. So Lord Kapila is answering the first question of Devahuti, that the nature of bhakti. So he says there are multifarious paths of devotional service. So devotional service is one, but based on the qualities of the executor, it appears as multifarious. This is essentially a description of Mishra Bhakti. So what makes Bhakti Mishra Bhakti? Two things. The Bhavini, which is the intention, and the Swabhav, the nature of the executioner. And by that, Bhakti becomes Bahuvidho. It becomes multifarious. So the intention and the nature of the executioner, Pumsha, the executioner. If the person is the nature of the person is tamasic, then his bhakti will be tamasic. If it is rajasic, then his bhakti will be rajasic, and if it is sattvic, his bhakti will be sattvic. So he may be executing all the angas of the bhakti, but depending on the person's swabhav guna and bhava, or each and every of the anga, like Shravana, Kirtana, Smaran, etc., may themselves be in tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic. Now, we have spent so much time, especially in Bhakti Shastri, repeatedly saying that bhakti is beyond the modes. And Lord Kapila himself, when he was describing bhakti in the 25th chapter, he said that when the service spirit is engaged in devotional service to the personality of Godhead without any motive, this is far better than salvation. Now we see that Kapila is talking about bhakti contaminated by the modes. And in order to explain this, bhakti can never be contaminated. The executioner can be contaminated. Lord Kapila, he specifically uses the word bhavani, that the intent of the person, based on the intent and according to the nature, the execution of bhakti may be contaminated. So this is the philosophical foundation, because he will now describe bhakti in the three modes of ignorance, passion, and goodness. This also becomes the basis of the fourth canto, because essentially fourth canto is describing it is elaborating on the practice of bhakti in the three modes. Bhakti in the mode of ignorance is exemplified by Prajapati Daksha. Bhakti in the mode of passion is exemplified by Dhruva Maharaj. Bhakti in the mode of goodness by Prithu Maharaj. And then finally, bhakti in the mode of pure goodness by the bhakti in the mode of pure goodness is, who were those? They received the Rudra Gita from Lord Shiva, right? By the Prachetas. Yes, the Prachetas, they show the bhakti in the mode of pure goodness. So this actually becomes the basis of the fourth canto. Srila Prabhupada correlates this with Bhagavad Gita also. He says that this is very nicely described in Bhagavad Gita. So the verse that is referring to is 7:16, Chatubija Bhajante Ma, right? The four kinds of devotees. Artharto, Jigyasu, Gyani, Artharti, the four kind of. So actually he says the path of devotional service is one without a second. But according to the devotee's condition, devotional service appears in multifarious varieties, as will be nicely explained in the following verses. Okay, so I'll do this verse, and then after that we'll pause for any discussion. Abhisandhaya yohimsam dambam sarayam eva sambrame bhinadragbhavam mai kuryat satamasaha. Devotional service executed by a person who is envious, proud, violent, and angry, and who is a separatist, is considered to be in the mode of darkness. So, quite clear that this verse is talking about tamasic bhakti, bhakti in the mode of ignorance. What is the characteristics of the performer? That he is samrambhi, that he is angry, and he is bhinnadrak. Bhinnadrak means that he makes a distinction between himself and others, specifically in the context of happiness and distress. He sees the other's happiness as his own distress, and he sees his own distress as others' happiness. He is without compassion. He executes such bhakti with the goal of violence, hatred, and pride. So, a more philosophical question may be asked over here, that if we are now accepting that bhakti gets contaminated by the modes of the practitioner, and we also know for a fact that bhakti is the only way to transcend the modes, then what's the hope? It's like a catch-22. That bhakti is getting contaminated by the modes, but only bhakti can help one conquer the modes. So for those who are already embodied, those who are already in the modes, what is the hope for them? And the hope for them is that if they execute devotional service as per the instructions of a bona fide devotee. That bhakti, even though, excuse me, it may be performed by a practitioner who is under the modes, that bhakti will be free of modes. Because the person is not performing bhakti according to his swabhav. He is performing bhakti according to the instructions that are given to him. So this is sadhana vaidhi bhakti. And that is why the sadhana vaidhi bhakti is bhakti's mercy, that it is coming down to accept us and uplift us from where we are. It's not even waiting for us to purify ourselves by the other angas, to become transcendental to the modes and then execute bhakti, but it is coming down to our level. And what is the media that it is using? That of our spiritual guru, sadhu and shastra. So we may not have a nature that is transcendental, but if we submit to the instructions, it is as good as performing bhakti that is independent of the modes. By the practice of such bhakti, the modes that we have will be eradicated and we will naturally perform bhakti. From sadhana bhakti, we will then move to raga bhakti without having to artificially submit to the rules and regulations. So a little bit more about bhakti in the mode of ignorance. So a person in this mood may be performing bhakti, but with a desire to punish and condemn others. So this is tamasic bhakti, that one performs bhakti with a desire to curse other people. If one performs bhakti with a desire to condemn other people, that is bhakti in the mode of ignorance, out of anger or out of excessive anger. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that this should not be confused with transcendental anger. So Arjun and Bhima were very angry on the battlefield, but their bhakti is not tamasic bhakti. They were killing, ghastly activities. Like Bhim, he was tearing away the limbs of people, and Arjun was literally killing hundreds and thousands of people. But their bhakti is not tamasic. It's not in the mode of ignorance, because their anger was used in the service of the Lord. Whereas the one was actually executing bhakti in order to condemn others, like what's the name of Ramachandra, right? Ramachandra, he was the god brother of the spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he would make it a point to condemn others, find faults in others. That is tamasic bhakti. The caution here also is given is that even if one sees a devotee executing bhakti under the modes, one should not disrespect such a person. However, it is advisable to keep distance from them and offer them respects from afar. This is the recommendation of tamasic bhakti. In the Brihadaranyaka Puran, it is said that the tamasic bhakti is further divided into 3 categories. Prabhupada calls that out, and Lord Kapila also calls it out in this verse. So there is bhakti that is performed with a view to harm others, himsa. That is the lowest of the tamasic bhakti. So this is tamasic. Then there is bhakti that is performed with matsaryam. Matsaryam is envy or hatred or cheating mentality. This is the rajasic tamasic. It is tamasic, but in the mode of passion. And then there is bhakti that is performed out of pride, dambham. It is performed out of pride that I am better than you. So this is sattvic, tamasic. And each of the three kinds of bhakti are also further subdivided in the same way. So rajasic is also sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, and sattvic is also sattvic, rajasic, tamasic. So in this way, there are 9 kinds of bhakti. So Srila Prabhupada says that he quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti, that as per him, a Vaishnava who is not of good character should be avoided. A Vaishnava who has taken the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the ultimate goal of life, but if one is not pure and still has motives, then he is not a Vaishnava of the first order of good character. One may offer his respects to such a Vaishnava because he has accepted the Supreme Lord as the ultimate goal of life, but one should not keep company with a Vaishnava who is in the mode of ignorance. Okay. Next verse will describe bhakti in Rajasic and then Sattvic. So we'll pause here and see if there's any discussion so far.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Regarding the shelter taking, which we spoke in previous verses, that how Mother Devahuti was saying that the people are blind and people are sleeping, they are not taking shelter. It's not the fault of the or the Supreme Lord, but it's the fault of the. So I was thinking that in the same family, two children are growing up. One child takes up the devotional service, the other child does not. The environment is same. The everything that's resources is same. Everything is available, but yet there is 2 different personalities, and how the other person cannot see the benefit of devotional service, although everything is available in front of his eyes or her eyes. So what is that? My question is, how we can bring that awareness, open that eyes which is blinded in that person who's everything is there but still not unable to take it. Even in our case, and I can speak my case, although I would have come across many people who are in that devotional path, I would not have considered until the time has come that we are talking about the time factor also at one point in time. So I can until the time had come, I was still blind to all the other things, and suddenly something clicked and something opened up. So what is that? Is that something that we got rid of all the sinful reactions in our consciousness? That's why we are able to, or can you please speak on a little bit more on that?
Yes, you're right. That is definitely one of the reasons that when the influence of the modes, they naturally weaken, as one becomes more inclined to topics of transcendence. And there are other factors also. Purvariti, might be Purvapriti, sorry. So most of us are not starting bhakti from this life. So because of various reasons, we were practicing it. Because of various reasons, we did not complete it, but it is there. And the analogy is given, like there is fire in the wood and it's waiting for a spark, and then it comes. So who gives that? I think Raghunath Maharaj gives this analogy. Wet wood and dry wood, both have fire in them. And when the wood becomes dry, then it quickly catches fire. So based on our previous activities, we had inclination. And when the time was right, when the wood was dried, because of the natural attenuation of our reactions, the single most prominent factor that is generally considered in this case is the mercy of a devotee. Everything may be there. You know, we may have our Purva Priti, we may have Satogun becoming prominent, all of that may be there. But unless we get the mercy of a devotee, we will not be able to take to bhakti. Now you're making a point that we got the mercy of the devotee at different points of time in our previous life, but did not take to it. And for some reason, at some point, we did take to it. And that's where the other factors come into picture. And were we ready to receive that mercy? Were we dry enough to catch the spark that was sent our way? And then based on the free will, did we desire? Because it's not really a mechanical process. It's not really, even though we give analogy of wood, and they're mostly physical factors. So they're useful to describe certain aspects of it. But we are live sentient beings. So free will is free will. It's like a bird. At some point, it might sit on one branch. Sometimes it might sit on another branch. Only the owner of the free will can exercise control of it. So just like we exercise free will to turn away from Krishna for whatever reason, we exercise the free will to turn towards him also. And in terms of adopting the mood of Devahuti, of helping others, so the mood is like mood of Devahuti is prominent in the sense that it is that of attached detachment. Right. So all the questions that she's asking shows that she has so much care for the Jiva Lokasya. And the deliberation, like she could have asked about Krishna's Vrindavan Leela, which probably would be topics that were more interesting to her. She could have asked for more esoteric aspects of the philosophy that she could have understood, but no. Out of compassion, she asked for the benefit of others, of us. That's the attachment. And the detachment is that it is there. Whether we take it or not, it's up to us. So for those of us who have children, I think this mood we are forced to acquire that. Otherwise, it causes a lot of disturbance in our mind. Because we do want them to become devotees, but then at some point we realize that we cannot force them to become devotees. So this mood of attachment we have to cultivate. Either we do it naturally or it's forced upon us.
That force would be detrimental rather helping on the children, right? To those who are not willing to.
That's what I've seen. The children who were forced, they practice till the time that they are forced to practice, and then they don't when the situation changes. So even though they are born in devotee households, but just like we found Krishna consciousness on our own, we on our own free will, nobody forced us. Some point we started going to the temple, eating prasadam, associating with devotees. Some point we decided to start chanting and take to the process seriously. So at all points, we had the choice and we exercised that choice. Same way the children have to do that. Each one of them needs to make that choice. The circumstances for them making the choices are probably more favorable because it is available more easily, more abundantly. But nevertheless, they need to make the choice. They need to fall into Krishna consciousness the same way that we fell into Krishna consciousness. There's nothing like being born into Krishna consciousness.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, there is this saying that said, you can take the horse to the fountain, but you cannot force the horse to drink the water from the fountain.
That is true. Even Krishna cannot force us to become Krishna conscious. So difficult for us to be more powerful than Krishna. Okay, no more questions. We can move on to verse 9. Vishayan abhisandhaya yasyaishwaryameva va achada varchayedyo mam prathak bhava sarajasaha. The worship of deities in the temple by a separatist with a motive for material enjoyment, fame, and opulence is devotion in the mode of passion. So this is Rajasic Bhakti, where the desire is enjoyment, fame, and opulence. Now, in the course of Bhakti, one will naturally receive a lot of genuine appreciation. And there is nothing wrong in accepting that appreciation. Because the devotee accepts the appreciation of others as a blessing. It's either as a blessing or an instruction. So when a devotee appreciates a certain quality and sincerely in another devotee, so one way to understand it is that this devotee is blessing me. That may I have more of this quality. Another way of understanding it is that this devotee is instructing me that I should develop more of this quality. In either cases, the notion of the self is not there. But if somebody was to perform bhakti with the primary motivation of receiving glorification, if one performs bhakti essentially for puja, that everybody says, oh, there goes a great devotee of the Lord. There goes a devotee who only drinks milk and nothing else. There goes a devotee who is so renounced that he has renounced renunciation. So if one is executing bhakti in this, then the glorification of the Lord becomes secondary. Such a bhakti is in the mode of passion, Rajasic bhakti. And again, the recommendation by Prabhupada is one should respect such devotees but keep a distance from them. Now, what is the advice to such devotees? The advice is still the same. That the bhakti, even if it is performed improperly, is still purifying. It's the only path of purification. If one sees these tendencies of being prone to receiving glorification, then one should do the opposite of that, which is render service. So the common thread between this verse and the previous verse is the separatist. Prabhupada uses the word separatist in both the verses. In Tamasic, Bhinnadrak is called separatist. In this word, Prathak Bhava. And the reason Prabhupada calls them separatists is because the desires and the motives are separate from their practice. So the example that is an analogy that is given is that there is a beautiful woman. A child will see her as a mother. A man will see her as an object of lust. A tiger will see her as food. And a devotee will see her as a spirit soul. So the same object, but the perception is predicated on the subject. So when there is this difference between the object and the subject, that is Bhinnadrak or Prathak Bhava. Now, the devotee is not Prathak Bhava in the sense that he is seeing her as what she really is, which is the soul. But in other cases, people will practice bhakti with a motive that is different from the purpose of executing bhakti. So one who is in the mode of ignorance, he will see his own happiness and distress as more important than the others. So he is envious of the other devotees or other people in general. One who is practicing in the mode of passion, his Bhinnadrak or Prathak Bhava is that he sees a difference between his own interests and the interests of the Lord. The one in ignorance sees the difference between his own interests and others' interests. In the mode of passion, difference between his own interest and that of the Lord. What is the Lord's interest? The Lord's interest is you serve me. What is the interest of such a devotee? Oh my Lord, you must serve me. That is where this Prathak Bhava comes. In the mode of goodness, which will be discussed next, the vision is desiring something else, like desiring liberation. So Srila Prabhupada says that the word separatist must be understood carefully. The Sanskrit word in this connection are Bhinnadrak and Prathak Bhava. A separatist is one who sees his interest as separate from that of the Supreme Lord. Mixed devotees or devotees in the mode of passion and ignorance think that the interest of the Lord is supplying the orders of the devotee. The interest of such devotees is to draw from the Lord as much as possible for their sense gratification. This is the separatist mentality. Okay, verse 10. Karma niraharam uddisya parasmin va tadarpanam yajedyastavyamiti va prathak bhava sasatvikaha. When a devotee worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers the results of his activities in order to free himself from the inebrities of fruitive activities, his devotion is in the mode of goodness. So here it is Sattvic Bhakti. But it is still contaminated by the modes because the purpose that the person is executing this bhakti is to destroy karma. He really does not have the mood to serve the Lord. So he worships the Lord in such a way that aligns with his varnashram dharma. So as part of his varnashram dharma, he worships according to the varna and the ashram. And the reason that he is still worshipping the Lord is because of his desire for liberation. Prathak bhava. That is his separatist mentality, that he needs to be free of the cycle of karma. He is using the Lord as an antiseptic, that I perform activities that infect me, but when I perform these activities aligned to the bhakti, then I am protected from that infection, so I don't fall sick and I can become liberated. The activities may be the same in the different modes. The intentions make the difference. So a person in tamasic, rajik or sattvic may be standing on the altar and offering arti. The person in sattvic mode may be offering the arti so that he does not have to take birth again, does not get influenced by the reactions of karma. The person in the mode of in the rajasic mode may be performing arti out of pride, that so many people are standing in the temple looking at me while I'm doing the arti. Does not realize they're actually looking at the deity, but he thinks that they're all looking at me, how important I am as I am offering this arti. So basically out of pride. And then the person who is tamasic may be doing the worship that I may get some powers by which I can curse somebody or I can destroy somebody, or he may be doing it so as to deprive somebody else of the opportunity to do it. So out of envy of others, he may be doing it. So in this verses, the three kinds of bhakti have been described, and I'll quickly summarize. Actually, I summarized the 4 kinds. The 11th and 12th are coming, but I'll summarize them. In the 8th verse, tamasic bhakti, the performer of the bhakti is contaminated with envy, violence, pride, and anger, and his mentality is devoid of compassion and a desire to destroy others. Rajasic bhakti is described in verse 9, where the intention is material enjoyment, fame and opulence, and his mentality is desire for objects other than the Lord. Then verse 10 is sattvic bhakti, where the person offers the results of the Lord and worships results to the Lord and worships as a duty to become free from karma. And the mentality is a desire for liberation. And then in the next 2 verses, 11 and 12, we'll talk about Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness, where the bhakti is without any material qualities, nirguna, madguna, shruti matrena. And what is the mentality? Mentality is that there is no deliberation on the performance of bhakti. It's not artificial. It flows naturally and without cessation. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he also speaks about the destination of the performers of such bhakti. So he says that when Gyan is secondary and bhakti is primary or predominant, it is called Jnana Mishra Bhakti. And the destination of such peoples is Shantaras Rati in the spiritual world. This is the mood of neutrality. If Gyan is, so previous we had seen that bhakti was prominent and gyan was secondary. Now we see that bhakti is secondary and gyan is prominent. Such people achieve sayujya mukti or impersonal liberation. Now, when bhakti is performed as part of one's varnashram, so he says that when it is mixed with karma such as horse sacrifice, desire for material gain, that when there is an offering of some actions but not all actions, such bhakti produces salokya mukti. So the person will reside on the same planet as the Lord. And then if one performs bhaktis and offers, so this is one performing karma mishra bhakti, but not completely able to detach from the results of the action. So some activities, they are detached, some they are not. So he says that this produces Shantarati. So summarizing again, when bhakti is prominent and gyan is an anga, Shantarati. When gyan is prominent and bhakti is an anga, sayujya mukti. When bhakti is prominent and karma is an anga, salokya mukti. When karma is prominent and bhakti is an anga, Shantarati. Talks about this various destinations. Now he also makes this interesting point that when a person performs Mishra Bhakti, which means that bhakti is mixed with some material desires, the results of those material desires are fulfilled to a much greater extent. So for example, if somebody is worshipping the Lord with a desire for wealth, then the person will become extremely wealthy. So this is karma mishra bhakti, right? And if it is karma is prominent, there is the destination of Shantarati. But the results of the karma, because of the power of bhakti, becomes magnified many times over. And this happens because the law of karma does not really hold because of the presence of bhakti. Because the Lord becomes compassionate, Lord becomes attracted, that even the Mishra part, he will reciprocate excessively. If a person is performing certain karmas by which he would become a millionaire, when it is karma mishra bhakti, he becomes a multimillionaire because of the mercy of the Lord. So this is mentioned earlier on, akama sarvakama vi moksha kamo dharvi tivrena bhakti yogena. That the recommendation is whether you are without desires, full of desires, or desiring liberation, approach the Lord, and the Lord will reciprocate. Okay. Okay, I'll do one more verse, and then after that we'll pause for discussion. Madguna Shruti Matrena Mai Sarve Naguashyaye Manogati Ravichinna Yatha Ganga Ambhasom Budhau Lakshanam Bhakti Yogasya Nirgunasya Hayudaratam Ahitukya Avyavahita Ya Bhakti Purushottame. This is verse 11 and 12. the manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganges flows naturally towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Lord. So this, no surprise, is the description of bhakti in Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. So in Lord Kapila had already spoken about pure devotional service in 25th chapter, specifically in verse 32. Now he is repeating it again here because of the context. There he had simply spoken about pure devotional service. Now he's contrasting it with devotional service in the modes. So what does he say? That the mind continuously flows to the Supreme Lord, situated in all the antakaranas. So all the senses are saturated by the presence of the Lord. And what is the udipan for this? Just by hearing about his qualities. So this is the nature of pure devotional service. So the meaning, because the mind flows continuously to me just by bhakti yoga with hearing and other processes beyond the gunas. So what is the Lord talking about here? He is saying that the nature of this bhakti is ahituki and avyahita. That it is causeless and it is beyond the modes. So the explanation is given with the analogy of the river Ganga. That when the river Ganga is flowing, there are many obstacles. But the river will ultimately flow into the ocean. Now, even the ocean is an obstacle. That when the water of the river tries to flow into the ocean tries to flow the water back out. But even then, the river persists and finally empties into the ocean. So two kind of obstacles. One is the material obstacles to bhakti. Second is obstacles by the Lord. What are the obstacles by the Lord? The promise of Sarishti and Salokya and other kinds of liberation. Like we see Prahlad Maharaj, he was tempted by Narsingadev, or the Prachetas. They were tempted by the Lord with opulence and liberation, but no interest. Right? Now, whether it is an obstacle or a test, or whether it is something to demonstrate the superiority of bhakti for others, but the devotees will overcome them. So what are the qualities of this bhakti? It is devoid of having any other results in mind. The person is not interested in having any result. So it is not like Gyan, or it's not like Astang, where the person is looking to achieve something, whether it is knowledge or mystic siddhis. A person who is performing bhakti is not even desiring to obtain bhakti. So the person is only performing bhakti because he is naturally attracted to it. Not performing that if I perform bhakti, I will get more bhakti, and when I get more bhakti, then I will be able to control the Lord, and then I will do this and that. No, they don't have all these thoughts. ahituki. They're simply performing bhakti because it is the process that is attractive to them. So in the first canto, where the different stages of bhakti are described, so this is in first canto, 6th chapter, in the commentary on verses 25 to 27. 12 stages of bhakti are described. And sadhu sang and prema. So bhakti begins with sadhu sang, ends with prema. But they should not be considered as cause and effect. One should not consider that I took to sadhu sang so that I can get prema. Each one of them in themselves is an activity that is performed for the pleasure of the Lord. So this is an important understanding, because many times when we talk about the stages of bhakti, then we say that, or in our mind we think that this stage is performed so that I can go to the next stage. I can do bhajana kriya so that I go to anartha nivritti. I can do anartha nivritti so that I can go to nishtha. It's a fruity mentality. It's not. We don't perform bhakti for that reason, that we may quick become more advanced there. It seems a little counterintuitive because we are always asked to make more advancement, but the advancements that we are asked to make is simply in our mood of service. Everything else happens on its own. That whether we are at Shraddha or Sadhu Sang or Nishtha Ruchi or Bhav or Prem, that's an outcome that happens on its own. Right? If we start working towards them, then there's no difference between fruitive bhakti and Shuddha bhakti. Second quality is that bhakti is avyahita, which is it is unobstructed. So it is unobstructed by jnana or karma. It is beyond the modes. So in the 11th canto, and I won't read the verse in the interest of time, but 11th canto, chapter 25, verses 27 to 28. It is explained that the devotee, the happiness experienced by a devotee is beyond the modes. Srila Prabhupada explains that the characteristics of pure devotion given by Lord Kapila in Madguna Shruti Maitrena, Madguna Shruti, that when the person hears about my transcendental qualities, such bhakti appears. Avinchana means executed without any interruptions. No material conditions can stop. And ahituki means without reason. So this we discussed, that does not render service for any kind of benefit, whether it is material or whether it is spiritual. So this is the first symptom of anabhilashita shunyam. So ahituki also means, slightly more technical understanding, but ahituki also means that if bhakti has no reason, bhakti has no cause, it means that the only cause of bhakti is bhakti itself. Which means that one only performs bhakti in order to attain bhakti itself. Like when we say that we chant the name of the Lord only for the purpose of getting an opportunity to chant the name of the Lord. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that sometimes mercy and association of devotees is considered to be the cause of bhakti. Now it's interesting that In Madhurya Kadamni, he himself says that mercy and association is the cause of bhakti. Here he is negating it. He says sometimes mercy and association of devotees is considered to be the cause of bhakti. However, it is not the cause of bhakti since it is part of bhakti. So he's negating it in a very interesting way. He's maintaining it while at the same time negating. So mercy and association are not the cause of bhakti unless they are delivered as part of bhakti. When they're delivered as part of bhakti, they're bhakti, which means that there is no external cause of bhakti by which we can understand that bhakti is causeless. Okay. So I went over time. My apologies. I'll pause here, see if you have any comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. We say that we have to do anything to please the Lord, okay? But then if we expect the Lord to be pleased, that means we have an expectation as well. If he's not pleased, then we're not happy. That means there is a cause and a reason. We want him to be pleased. That means even in this there is an expectation.
So lack of desire does not mean that the person becomes like a machine, right? That is working as a machine. But what is the center of the desire? So when it is said that the person does not desire anything for himself. So if you're executing bhakti to please the Lord, to please the devotees, then you're not at the center. Correct? So you're executing bhakti that the Lord is pleased. Now, if you're thinking that now that the Lord is pleased, now he will give me a promotion or he will give me mystic powers, that's different. Right? But if it ends over there, that I'm serving my Guru Maharaj so that he's happy, I'm serving the Lord so that he is pleased, serving the devotees so that they are pleased, right? That is desireless. Desireless does not mean that the person is devoid of desires. Desireless means that the person is devoid of personal desires.
Yes, there is another aspect of when you please someone, you know that the person is pleased, then you feel good about this feeling good factor. What is, should we nullify it or should it?
No, it should not be nullified, right? It's good. That is good feeling. But is that what is driving you? Are you serving the other person so that you feel good? Then that should be nullified, right? If somebody is serving the other person and waiting for the other person to say, Prabhu, your service is extraordinary. I have never seen anybody serve like you. You're the best of all the services that I have seen. That's not good. Right, that's not good. But if the person is serving and the person is reciprocating, he accepts. We mentioned that how does a devotee accept the glorification of other devotees? Two things: blessings and instructions. And the person is giving blessings out of the magnanimity of his heart, and then he accepts them. That yes, the Lord's blessings are flowing through the devotees, and he gives instructions. The devotee says, Prabhu, you made good chapatis. So what is Guru Maharaj comes to your house, you make chapati, Guru Maharaj says, you made good chapatis. What will you do? Let me go and write down this recipe right away. Because this chapati, please, Guru Maharaj, next time I have to make sure I make similar chapati. So there is an instruction in that glorification. Well, what is Guru Maharaj saying? I like this chapatis, make sure you make such chapatis for me in the future. You're taking it in that mood. Right? So if you take it in that mood, then it is not an obstruction. So ultimately, as the point is made, externally there's no difference between tamasic, rajvik, sattvic, and shuddha sattvic bhakti. Difference is the consciousness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. There are no more questions. We'll stop here. Ancha kalpatarubhayashchit kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hi, Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hari Bol.
See you all on Wednesday.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.